Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we're going to be talking about pied ball pythons. So let's get started. Hey guys, so for everyone who is newer to snakes or who've had them for a long time, everyone loves pied ball pythons. I would say they're the top three along with normal albinos and blue-eyed Lucies. When it comes to pieds, there are so many different colors and patterns. We won't be able to go over all of them today, but I'm going to be showing you several of the ones that I have, and I'm going to be explaining it to you guys a little bit better. These are pictures of normal pied ball pythons. The crazy thing about it is they all look completely different. The amount of whites they can have speckling in the white. They can be higher, like for example yellows. They can be very dark. Like this one right here, they can actually have smiley faces on them. That's a pretty common pied thing. But they can look totally different, and these are all just normal pieds. The reason that is because the pied genetics just really distorts that normal ball python pattern and cuts it off randomly in different spots, which can cause so many different looks for just a simple normal. Pieds are not just found in ball pythons. You can actually also find them in deer, horses, and even dogs. It's actually a genetic condition that just distorts the pigment. Here, I'm going to try to find a picture of a pied deer. I used to have a picture on my phone. It doesn't affect the animal really in any way, except some of their body lacks pigment, which causes the big spots or huge chunks of white throughout their body. They actually have documents of pied ball pythons dating back all the way to 1966. That was the first time they were actually mentioned, but it wasn't until the 1980s that they were properly recorded. Right now in the pet trade, since there's such a high demand for them, they actually have a pretty good price range still. For example, when I have males, they're as cheap as $275, and they can go up into the thousands depending on how many more morphs or genetics are in that snake. The reason why pieds are always at least a little bit more expensive than a lot of other snakes is their genes and genetics are recessive. And what that means is you need both parents to have those same genetics in order to make more. So for example, if you take a pied and you put it with a normal, all the babies are going to look normal, but they're going to be het or heterozygous, which means they carry the genes for pied. Now you take any of those babies and breed it to a pied, half the babies are now going to come out pied because they are carriers of that gene. So when it comes to purchasing these animals, if you ever find a snake that says het pied, that means it carries the genetics. Depending on what each parent was, you can have a snake that's 100% het pied, which means if you breed it to another pied, you are going to get about 50% of the babies coming out pied, or they can say 66% or 50%. It all depends on what each parent is. Some het pieds have things called ringers. If you look at their sides, leading down to their belly will actually be normally like either a distortion of the pattern or some white. Some will actually have bigger chunks of white that wrap almost all the way around the snake. That is a very good indication that that snake is het pied, but it's not a guarantee. If you're newer into snakes and you're looking into breeding and stuff like that, the easiest way is just to get things that you know are the correct genetics, because unless you personally know the breeder, somebody can slap the words het pied on anything and it doesn't necessarily mean they are actually het pied. They could say whatever they want because you cannot tell by looking at that animal, so you really have to trust the person you're purchasing from if it is ever a het. So if you're newer, I would just say spend the extra money and get a pied. Pied females especially drastically increase with age, so I would recommend going and getting a pied female that was a baby and growing it up. Try to buy an adult female pied. It's not unheard of for a normal female pied to go for $1,000 to $2,000 depending on how old she is and how many eggs she's produced, even just being a normal pied. Now once you start throwing other genetics into pieds, they will look completely different. Here we'll go through some different ones. I'm sure you guys have heard of a banana ball python. This is a banana pied. As they age, they get the spots just like a normal banana. Banana pied has two genes. It has the banana and it has the pied. This right here is a double recessive. This is an albino pied. These guys are a lot more expensive because albino is the same as pied. Both parents have to carry the genetics in order to pass it down to the babies. So you need an albino pied or something that's het albino, het pied. It has to have both of those to make babies that have both genes. So when you look into things like this, like a double recessive, they're quite a bit more money, but they look amazing. Right here, I feel like never gets enough good words. This is a Mojave Pied. For those of you who don't know what a Mojave is, here is a picture. When you mix it with pied, it ends up looking crazy. Some of them have these very dark patterns around there. I'll call them saddles, even though they don't really have any. But this really dark pattern around. That's why I purchased the specific male that I have, because I love how almost green and gray he is. And the babies he had this year were amazing. They were almost camo colored. There were greens and grays and browns, but that is just a normal Mojave Pied. I bred it with a pied, so all the babies were either pied or Mojave Pied. Here's a clip of my male Smiley. You could tell because he's got the smiley on his back, but that is a pretty much full-grown male pied. He's got lots of lights, lots of darks, but again, he's just a normal pied. It's a bonus that he has a smiley on his back, but he is a normal pied. When it comes again to breeding pieds, you can see some of these have a lot of white and some have very low white. This is a pinstripe NG pastel pied that I have, and he's very low white. So when he has babies, it doesn't mean all of his babies are going to come out lower white. Last season, that Mojave Pied bred with just about all the pied females that we have, and the babies were super colored with no white at all, and other ones had mostly white and just a couple little amounts of color on them. Breeding them is more or less random. Again, with those albino pieds, every year we breed and do the same pairing, and the babies every year look completely different. Some year they're all high white, some years they're very low, and other years it's been a really nice mixture. Really the only genetic I don't really like with pied is when it comes to lessers. A lesser pied can be a pure white snake, and a lot of them have very tiny heads or very tiny eyes. And it ends up sort of looking like a blue-eyed Lucy anyway. So that's really the only genetic I don't like. We're trying to branch out and get even more genetics for our pied. This is our pastel NG pied. She is super bright yellow. She's getting even more yellow with age. We're hoping that she'll throw some really nice babies this year. But we want to get even more different genetics into our pieds. Again, when it comes to pricing for these guys, you can get, especially males, a lot cheaper, but you're looking at spending at least a few $100s. But if you want something with a bunch of genes, normally the more crazy they look, the more expensive they're going to be. You can breed any ball python gene that you like to a pied and hold back some of those babies, and they will all be het pied. So for example, if you have a banana and you have a pied, you can breed them together and you are going to get bananas, and they're all going to be het pied for you. So if you ever kept any of those and wanted to breed it to a pied, then you're going to be looking at half the babies coming out pied. Those are just percentages and they are random. Sometimes you can breed, let's say, a pied to a het pied. You should get about 50% het pieds, 50% pieds, but that's not the case all the time. Sometimes you'll end up lucking out and get all pieds or all het pieds, or it could be just a random mix. It's all random and there's really no way to control it when you do that. The only way to know you're, for example, going to get all pieds from the pairing is make sure both parents are pied. Another thing to note, the more genes you put in there, the more washed out normally it's going to become, and it gets a little bit more difficult. So if you have let's say a 4, 5, or 6 gene pied, it's going to be very difficult to know exactly what genes are in them, because some of them have such little color on them. It's very hard to pick out what types of genes are in there until you can actually prove it out by breeding and by knowing what exactly the parents were. And from a breeding standpoint, I think they're a really good thing to breed. People almost always want pieds, even normal pieds, especially people who just want, for example, a pet. A lot of people normally pick pieds because they look so crazy compared to a normal, but they're still on the inexpensive side. So if you are looking to start a breeding program, I'd highly recommend getting some pieds or some het pieds. But again, make sure that you're getting the hets from somebody you know and you trust. That way you know, for example, it is actually 100% het pied, because if you have a snake and you grow it up for 2 to 5 years to get it breeding size, you breed it to your pied, and you get no pieds, and then you do it again the next year and you still get no pieds, and that ends up being a lot of work you put into an animal that ends up not even being what you originally wanted it to be. They are also one of the best eggs to hatch because you have no idea what they're going to look like and how much white they're going to have. So sometimes they crawl out and they look like they're going to almost be like a normal, and then they come out the rest of the way and the whole back end of them is white, or they've got a lot of different colors and patterns that you weren't even expecting. Once they have their first shed, it's really, really nice to see what they look like. But that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do videos every Wednesday, and we'll see you next Wednesday.